Introduction. The hidden force you never saw. You wake up every day with 1,000 things to do. You got goals, plans, dreams, maybe even a burning desire to achieve something bigger than where you are right now. You know that in order to get to the next level, you need to put in the work. You try, and yet something always feels off. Why does it seem like some people make progress effortlessly while others struggle, even when they work harder? You try harder, you focus more, you push through discomfort, yet the weight on your shoulders never seems to lift. You ask yourself, why does this feel so hard? What if I told you that there's an invisible force affecting every single action you take? What if I told you that this force, one you've never seen or fully understood, could be the very thing holding you back from the success, focus, and freedom you crave? This book is about revealing that force, a silent influence that impacts how your mind works, how you focus, and how you rise to your potential. It's about uncovering why some minds rise effortlessly while others stay trapped despite all their effort. Mental gravity isn't something you see, it's something you feel. It's the invisible weight that slows you down, wears you out, and makes every step forward feel like an uphill battle. And it's not just about willpower or intelligence. It's about understanding the forces at play in your mind and how to break free from them. In the chapters ahead, we're going to explore how your mental environment shapes your ability to achieve, how invisible pressures are keeping you stuck, and why some people seem to rise while others remain grounded. If you're ready to stop pushing harder and start understanding how to lighten your mind, then keep listening. This journey is not about making you work harder. It's about making you work smarter by changing the very conditions under which you operate. Because once you understand how mental gravity works, you'll never see effort the same way again. Chapter 1. The hidden weight in your mind. There's a constant hum in your mind. You might not always notice it, but it's there. The low, persistent noise of unfinished tasks, unresolved emotions, and decisions you've put off. It's like carrying a backpack full of stones, small at first, but after a while it feels impossible to move without it. This mental weight isn't something you can always point to. It's not a physical burden, like lifting a heavy box or running uphill, but it's just as real. And more often than not, it's invisible. It's the unfinished conversations, the lingering doubts, the goals you haven't started yet. It's the mental clutter that makes you feel like you're carrying more than you should. You probably already know what this feels like. Have you ever sat down to work, only to find your mind constantly wandering? You might be staring at your computer, but your thoughts are elsewhere, on something you should have done yesterday, or on something that's hanging over your head. You tell yourself, I should be more focused. I should be more disciplined. But no matter how much you try, the mental weight doesn't lift. It just stays there, pressing down, distracting you from the very task in front of you. The thing is, this mental weight is not accidental. It's not some random event that just happens to you. It's created by the mental environment you live in. And just like a physical environment, it shapes your actions, your focus, and your ability to move forward. But here's the truth. You don't have to live under the weight of your own mind. You don't have to let this invisible force hold you back, because understanding where this weight comes from is the first step to releasing it. Why effort alone isn't enough. It's natural to think that working harder is the solution. After all, you've been taught that effort is the key to success. But what happens when your best efforts are consistently met with frustration? What happens when you're doing everything you're supposed to do, and yet nothing seems to work? Effort alone doesn't guarantee success. In fact, when you're working within a high-pressure mental environment, all that effort can become like running in place. You're expending energy, but you're not really getting anywhere. This is one of the cruelest traps of modern life, working harder without ever making the progress you expect. The truth is, most people don't realize that the mental weight they carry is making their efforts less effective. They keep pushing, thinking they just need to try harder. But the harder they push, the heavier it gets. The more you carry, the harder it becomes to move forward. So why does this happen? Why do some people seem to advance with less effort, while others struggle to keep up despite working harder? It comes down to mental gravity. The invisible weight that your mind carries shapes your actions, and the environment you create in your mind determines how easy or difficult progress will feel. The more you carry, the more energy you waste just maintaining your position, leaving you with less power to move forward. The power of clarity and focus. When your mind is cluttered with unresolved issues, distractions, and self-doubt, it's almost impossible to move forward effectively. You might feel like you're doing everything you can, But if your mental environment is chaotic, your energy is being pulled in multiple directions. This is where clarity becomes powerful. When you remove distractions and reduce mental clutter, your energy can flow more freely. Clarity doesn't mean having everything figured out. It means creating an environment where your thoughts can move without obstruction, where your actions feel deliberate instead of forced. Think about it. When you're clear-headed, everything seems easier. Tasks feel more manageable. Focus feels effortless. Decisions are made quickly and with confidence. This is not a coincidence. It's the result of mental gravity being low. When your mind is clear, there's less weight holding you down. There's less friction, less resistance, and therefore more energy to move forward. This is why some people can tackle massive projects while others feel overwhelmed by the smallest task. The difference isn't about how hard they work. It's about the environment they created in their minds, the hidden cost of mental clutter. Mental clutter is the silent force that wears you down over time. It's not just about the big decisions or the huge tasks that you haven't finished. It's about the small, everyday thoughts that pile up and create pressure, the decisions you've postponed, the conversations you've avoided, the goals you've left unfinished. Each of these small, unresolved pieces adds a layer of weight to your mind. Over time, this weight accumulates, and before you know it, you're carrying a mental load so heavy that even simple decisions feel like they require a monumental effort. But the thing is, this weight is avoidable. It's not inevitable. You don't have to live with it forever. In the chapters to come, we will explore the steps you can take to reduce this mental load. We'll talk about how to clear your mental clutter, how to create a lighter internal environment, and how to move forward with purpose and ease. But first, we need to understand why this weight exists in the first place, what causes it, and why do most people never notice it until it's too late. The power of environment. The environment around you shapes your actions, but just as important, your internal environment shapes how you move through life. You might think that your external circumstances determine your ability to succeed, but the truth is that it's your internal landscape that plays the biggest role. Your thoughts, emotions, and mental state influence how you respond to the world. If your internal environment is heavy and disorganized, everything you do will feel harder. If your mental environment is clear and aligned with your goals, your actions will flow with ease. The power to change your life is not just about working harder. It's about changing the mental environment you live in. And once you do that, everything else will follow. Chapter 2. The hidden weight in your mind. You don't feel it at first. It doesn't come with a loud warning or a jolt of realization. It's something that settles in slowly, quietly, until one day you wake up and realize you've been carrying something far heavier than you thought. It's not something physical. It's not a burden you can see, but it's there, pressing down on you, making every action, every decision, every task harder than it should be. The weight is in your mind. It's the mental clutter that builds up over time, the unresolved issues, the unfinished projects, the tasks you've postponed, the words left unsaid. It's the constant background noise of things that need attention but never seem to get it. And this weight doesn't just stay in the background, it grows. Every decision left undecided, every unfinished task, every ignored feeling adds to the load, making it heavier and harder to move through life. It's easy to ignore at first. You tell yourself that everyone has a busy mind, that life is just complicated, that being stressed out is just part of being alive. But slowly, bit by bit, it starts to take its toll. At first, it's subtle. You feel a little more tired than usual, a little less motivated to tackle the things that matter. You push through it, telling yourself you'll get back on track tomorrow, but tomorrow comes and nothing feels lighter. It just feels like more of the same. And eventually, you start to realize that you're not just tired from the physical demands of life. You're mentally drained, overwhelmed by the constant weight of everything you haven't dealt with. This mental weight doesn't just make you feel tired, it makes you less effective. It drains your energy and focus, making it difficult to concentrate on what's important. It eats up your mental bandwidth, leaving little room for the things that truly matter. It fills up every spare moment, making it impossible to simply relax or unwind. It's like being trapped in a room full of clutter. You can't find a way out because the mess is everywhere, and it feels like it's closing in on you. It's not just the big problems that create this weight, it's the small ones too. The minor decisions you put off, the things you forget to do, the promises you make but never follow through on. They all pile up, and while each individual item might seem small, together they form a mass that becomes harder and harder to ignore. Over time, this mass becomes a part of you. It's like carrying a backpack that keeps getting heavier, but you don't notice it until you've been walking for miles, and suddenly you can't take another step. The strange thing is, you don't even realize how heavy it is until it starts to feel normal. You think you're just tired. You think you're just stressed. But that's not the whole picture. What's really happening is that your mind is carrying a load it wasn't designed to carry. It's trying to juggle too many things at once, and the result is that everything feels more difficult than it should. This weight isn't something that can be solved by working harder or pushing through it. You can't just ignore it, because it doesn't go away. And you can't simply outwork it, because it's not about effort, it's about structure. You don't need more willpower or discipline. You need to address the environment that's causing the weight in the first place. Every time you try to move forward without addressing the mental clutter, you're just adding more pressure. You're stacking more tasks on top of a pile that's already too high. The pressure doesn't ease. It increases. The weight grows heavier. And before you know it, you're stuck, trapped by the very environment you've created in your mind. What you need is not more effort. What you need is a way to lighten the load, to clear the space, to create the mental clarity that allows you to move forward without being bogged down by the weight of everything you've left unresolved. You have to start by recognizing the weight. You have to understand that it's there. Even if you can't see it, you have to acknowledge that it's affecting everything you do, even if it's not obvious at first. Once you realize that the mental clutter is real, you can begin to create space in your mind. You can start to clear out the unnecessary, to eliminate the distractions, to deal with the things that have been sitting in the back of your mind for far too long. Only when you do this can you truly begin to move freely again. Only when you clear the mental space can you truly focus on what's important. Only then can you rise above the weight and move forward without being pulled back. This is the beginning of lightening your load, of freeing your mind from the weight that has been holding you back. It's not going to happen overnight, and it's not going to be easy, but it is possible. And once you begin the process, you'll start to notice something amazing. You'll start to feel lighter. You'll start to feel more capable. And most importantly, you'll start to feel free. Chapter 3. The Weight of Distraction. Distraction feels harmless at first. It's a natural part of life, something we all deal with every day. A glance at your phone during a meeting, a stray thought that pulls you away from the task at hand, a quick break that turns into hours. These moments of distraction seem innocent, even necessary. We live in a world filled with endless information, constant noise and constant stimulation. Distraction has become so ingrained in our daily routines that it feels almost like a second nature. But the truth is, distraction is not neutral. It's a powerful force that contributes heavily to the weight we carry in our minds. And the more we allow it, the heavier our mental load becomes. In its most basic form, distraction is simply a shift in attention. It's a mental diversion that takes you away from what you're supposed to be focused on. That the consequences of these shifts are far more significant than they appear. Every time you divert your attention, you're not just losing a moment of focus, you're adding weight to your mind. This weight doesn't show up as a visible burden, but it accumulates over time, slowly draining your mental energy and making it harder to move forward. Distraction is insidious because it doesn't feel like a problem. It doesn't come with a loud alarm. It doesn't appear as a crisis. Instead, it's quiet, almost comfortable. You might even feel like you deserve the distraction. I've been working hard, I need a break, you tell yourself. The problem is that these small breaks, these moments of distraction compound. They stretch the limits of your attention, and as your focus drifts, the gravity of your mental environment increases. It's as though every time you switch your attention, you add another small weight to the pile of things you haven't addressed. You don't notice it at first, but after a while, the effects of constant distraction become impossible to ignore. Tasks start taking longer. Decisions feel more difficult. Your ability to focus starts to fade. The more your mind bounces between different things, the more fragmented your attention becomes. It's like trying to drive a car while constantly switching gears without ever accelerating. You're still moving, but you're not getting anywhere fast. What's even more frustrating is that in a world where productivity is praised, distraction seems to be everywhere. Social media, emails, text messages, news alerts, they all demand your attention. The modern world is built around these distractions, and the pressure to keep up with them only adds to the weight you already carry in your mind. Every time you glance at your phone, you're not just checking for a notification. You're allowing an interruption to pull you away from whatever you were focused on, and each interruption costs you more than you realize. It's not just the time you lose, it's the energy required to regain your focus, to get back on track. The more often this happens, the harder it becomes to focus and the more your mental load increases. It's easy to dismiss the effects of distraction because it doesn't seem like a big deal, but when you look at the bigger picture, it's clear that distraction is a major contributor to the mental clutter that weighs us down. Each small distraction adds to the weight of unfinished thoughts, unresolved tasks, and mental fragments that never quite get processed. Over time, this accumulation of mental debris becomes a barrier to progress. It prevents us from making decisions, from moving forward, from taking meaningful action. The problem with distraction is that it doesn't just affect our ability to focus, it also affects our emotions. Every time we get distracted, especially by something that doesn't align with our goals or values, it creates a sense of dissatisfaction. We start to feel like we're not in control of our time. We start to feel frustrated by our lack of progress. And this emotional friction only increases the weight of our mental gravity. The more we feel disconnected from our goals, the more mental resistance builds up. And the more resistance we face, the harder it becomes to take meaningful action. It's important to recognize that distraction doesn't only come from external sources. It can also come from within. Our own thoughts, worries, and anxieties can pull us away from the present moment. We can get lost in a spiral of overthinking, imagining worst-case scenarios, or obsessing over things we can't change. This internal distraction can be even more damaging than external distractions because it's harder to control. It's not something we can mute or turn off with the press of the button. It's something we have to learn to manage within ourselves. The question, then, is not how to eliminate distraction entirely. That would be impossible in the modern world. But how to manage it. How do we recognize when we're being distracted and, more importantly, how do we reduce the mental weight it adds to our lives? The first step is awareness. Recognizing when we're being distracted is crucial to taking control of our attention. This requires mindfulness and the ability to notice when our focus is drifting. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking we're still focused, when, in reality, we're just going through the motions. Being aware of when our attention is slipping away is the first step to regaining control. The second step is to create boundaries. We can't eliminate distractions completely, but we can create environments where distractions are less likely to interrupt us. This might mean turning off notifications, setting specific times to check emails or social media, or creating a physical space that minimizes distractions. It's about intentionally creating a mental environment where focus can thrive. The fewer distractions we allow into our environment, the less mental energy we waste on irrelevant tasks. The third step is to practice deep focus. This means training our minds to concentrate on one thing at a time. It's easy to jump from task to task, thinking we're being efficient. But the truth is that multitasking only increases mental friction. Focusing on one task at a time with full attention is far more effective than constantly switching between different things. The more we practice deep focus, the easier it becomes to sustain it for longer periods of time, and the less mental weight we carry from distractions. It's also important to recognize that distraction isn't just a mental issue, it's also an emotional one. Distractions often arise from a need to avoid discomfort. When we're faced with something difficult or unpleasant, our minds look for a way to escape. This is where self-discipline comes in. By learning to sit with discomfort and resist the urge to distract ourselves, we can build mental resilience. Instead of turning to distractions as a way to cope with stress or boredom, we can learn to manage those emotions in healthier ways. Finally, it's important to give ourselves grace. We live in a world that demands constant attention, and it's unrealistic to expect ourselves to never get distracted. What matters is how we respond when we do get distracted. Instead of beating ourselves up for losing focus, we can acknowledge the distraction and gently bring our attention back to what matters. This is not about perfection, it's about progress. And every time we practice focusing, we are reducing the mental weight that comes with distraction. Distraction is a heavy force, but it's one that we can manage. By becoming more aware of when we're being distracted, creating environments that minimize interruptions, and practicing deep focus, we can lighten the mental load that comes with it. And when we do, we free ourselves to move forward with greater ease and clarity. Chapter 4. The hidden resistance that holds you back. There's a quiet force inside every person that influences how they approach challenges, how they deal with adversity, and how they ultimately navigate life. It's the unseen resistance that often goes unnoticed, but it plays a crucial role in determining whether you succeed or remain stuck. Most people think of resistance as something external. It's the circumstances you face, the people who challenge you, the roadblocks that seem to appear out of nowhere. But the truth is, the resistance that keeps you from moving forward isn't always external. It's internal, and it's far more powerful than you realize. We all face difficulties in life. Some people seem to rise above them with ease. They navigate challenges with a calm sense of purpose, making it look almost effortless. On the other hand, there are those who feel stuck, trapped in a cycle of struggle, unable to break free. They work hard, they try their best, but it never seems to be enough. And no matter how much effort they put in, they keep hitting walls, feeling overwhelmed and falling behind. The difference between these two groups of people lies not in the circumstances they face, but in how they handle resistance. What is resistance? Resistance is the mental and emotional force that pushes back when you try to move forward. It's that nagging feeling of hesitation when you're about to take a leap of faith. It's the fear that creeps in when you think about starting something new, and it's the self-doubt that rises up when things get tough. Resistance is not something that can be seen or touched. It's a psychological and emotional force that arises within your own mind, and it can either hold you back or push you forward, depending on how you respond to it. What most people don't realize is that resistance is a natural part of the process. It's not something that should be avoided or feared. In fact, resistance is often an indicator that you're moving in the right direction. The more significant the challenge, the stronger the resistance tends to be. But here's the thing, most people experience resistance as a signal to stop, to back off, to choose comfort over challenge. They think the resistance is a sign they're not meant to succeed, when in reality, it's often the exact opposite. The two faces of resistance can take on two forms, external and internal. External resistance is the kind we're most familiar with. It's the obstacles we face in the world: criticism, rejection, lack of resources, time constraints, and so on. It's the setbacks, the failures, and the people who try to hold us back. While external resistance can certainly make life difficult, it's the internal resistance that's the true challenge. Internal resistance comes from within. It's the voice inside your head that tells you to stop when things get tough. It's the fear of failure, the self-doubt, the negative beliefs you've internalized over the years. Internal resistance tells you that you're not good enough, that you'll never succeed, that the effort isn't worth it. It keeps you stuck in the same place, holding you back from taking risks, from stepping outside your comfort zone, and from embracing the challenges that lead to growth. Most people spend their entire lives battling this internal resistance, not realizing that it's the key to unlocking their potential. They avoid it, run from it, or try to suppress it, all the while missing the fact that resistance is a natural part of the growth process. It's the pressure that shapes you. It's the tension that pushes you to evolve. The key is learning how to engage with resistance instead of trying to escape it. The trap of avoiding resistance. The biggest mistake people make when facing resistance is trying to avoid it. They see resistance as a sign that something is wrong, that they're on the wrong path, or that they're not meant to succeed. So they back off, they procrastinate, they find ways to distract themselves from the discomfort. But in doing so, they only reinforce the resistance, making it stronger over time. Avoiding resistance doesn't make it go away, it just makes it more powerful. When you avoid something long enough, it starts to feel like an insurmountable obstacle. You begin to believe that the resistance is too much to overcome, that you're not capable of breaking through it. This is the trap that keeps so many people stuck in the same place for years, wondering why they can't move forward, even though they're working so hard. Resistance is a natural part of the process of growth and change. It's not something to fear or avoid. It's something to understand, to embrace, and to learn how to navigate. When you understand that resistance is simply a sign that you're pushing yourself in the right direction, you can begin to see it as a challenge to be conquered, not a wall to be avoided. Why some people push through resistance? There are people who seem to handle resistance with ease. They face challenges head-on, never hesitating, never backing down. How do they do it? What sets them apart from others who struggle to overcome the same obstacles? The difference lies in how they view resistance. People who are able to push through resistance don't see it as a barrier. They see it as an opportunity. They understand that the bigger the resistance, the bigger the reward. They've learned that resistance is not something to fear, but something to engage with. When they face resistance, they lean into it rather than running away. This mindset allows them to approach challenges with a sense of curiosity and determination. Instead of being intimidated by the difficulty of a task, they embrace it as a sign that they're growing. They don't view failure as the end of the road. They see it as part of the journey. They know that every obstacle they overcome makes them stronger, more resilient, and more capable. This mindset is not something they were born with. It's something they developed over time, through experience and through the understanding that resistance is a necessary part of growth. They've learned how to reframe their thinking so that resistance becomes a tool, not an enemy. The role of self-awareness in overcoming resistance. One of the most powerful tools you have in overcoming resistance is self-awareness. When you are aware of the internal resistance you're facing, you can begin to separate it from the task at hand. Instead of being overwhelmed by the emotions and thoughts that come with resistance, you can recognize them as natural reactions and choose to move forward despite them. Self-awareness allows you to step back and observe your thoughts without becoming attached to them. You can acknowledge the fear, the doubt, the discomfort, but you don't have to let them control you. You can recognize that these feelings are temporary, that they don't define your abilities, and that you are capable of pushing through them. By building self-awareness, you create a space between you and your thoughts. You don't react to the resistance. You respond to it. You don't let it dictate your actions. Instead, you choose to act anyway, knowing that resistance is just a sign that you're on the path to something greater. How to engage with resistance. The key to overcoming resistance is learning how to engage with it rather than avoid it. Here are a few strategies to help you do that. Acknowledge the resistance. The first step is to simply acknowledge that resistance is present. Don't try to ignore it or push it aside. Recognize it for what it is, a sign that you're pushing yourself toward growth. Reframe the resistance. Instead of viewing resistance as something to fear, reframe it as a challenge. See it as a test of your ability to grow, to adapt, and to become stronger. Take small, consistent actions. When faced with resistance, it can be tempting to avoid the task altogether. Instead, take small steps. Break the task down into manageable parts and focus on making progress, no matter how small. Embrace the discomfort. Resistance often comes with discomfort, whether it's fear, anxiety, or self-doubt. Instead of trying to avoid the discomfort, embrace it. Understand that discomfort is a sign that you're growing, and it's a necessary part of the process. Celebrate your wins. Every time you push through resistance, celebrate your progress. Acknowledge the effort it took to move forward, and recognize that each small victory brings you closer to your goal. The path forward, overcoming resistance, is not an overnight process. It's something you'll face again and again as you work toward your goals. But as you continue to engage with resistance, you'll find that it loses its power over you. You'll learn to recognize it for what it is, a signal that you're moving in the right direction. And with each step forward, you'll build the mental strength and resilience needed to face even bigger challenges. Chapter 5. The cost of mental clutter. Mental clutter is one of the most invisible but insidious forces that affects our ability to focus, be productive, and achieve our goals. It doesn't scream for attention, but it's always there, lurking in the background, taking up space in our minds. The strange thing about mental clutter is that we don't always recognize it as the problem. It's easy to attribute our lack of focus or productivity to external factors, distractions, stress, or time constraints. But the truth is, mental clutter is often the silent culprit. At first it might seem like a small issue, a temporary disorganization that can be cleaned up later. But over time, as the clutter accumulates, it becomes more and more difficult to manage. It begins to affect everything you do. Your mind, instead of being clear and focused, is constantly trying to juggle dozens of unfinished thoughts, unresolved emotions, and tasks that need your attention. This mental noise takes up valuable cognitive resources, leaving you with less energy for the things that matter most. You might think of mental clutter as just being busy in your head, constantly thinking about everything you need to do, worrying about things you haven't yet figured out, or being overwhelmed by the sheer number of things on your to-do list. But the true cost of mental clutter goes much deeper than just a sense of being busy. It drains your mental energy, reduces your ability to think clearly, and makes even simple decisions feel overwhelming. Mental clutter isn't just about having too many tasks. It's about the unresolved issues, the lingering thoughts, the unprocessed emotions that occupy mental space. It's about the things you've put off, the problems you've avoided, the what-ifs that keep swirling around in your head. Each of these thoughts, emotions, and tasks is like a mental weight, and over time they add up. The more weight you carry, the harder it becomes to move freely, to think clearly, or to make progress. It's easy to see how mental clutter could slow down your productivity. When your mind is full of unfinished tasks and unresolved thoughts, it becomes difficult to focus on anything for an extended period. Your attention drifts from one thing to another, never fully committing to any task. And every time you switch gears, you lose valuable energy that could have been used to move forward. But the impact of mental clutter goes even deeper than just productivity. It affects your ability to make decisions, to stay motivated, and to feel at peace in your own mind. Think about the last time you tried to accomplish something while feeling mentally scattered. You might have started the day with good intentions, ready to tackle your goals. But then, as the day went on, your mind kept jumping from one thought to another. You remembered something you needed to do for work, then realized you hadn't replied to an important email, then thought about a personal issue that had been bothering you. Each thought took up mental space, leaving you feeling more and more drained as the day went on. By the time you got to the end of the day, you hadn't made as much progress as you wanted, and you felt frustrated, not because you weren't working hard, but because your mind was constantly pulling you in different directions. This is the nature of mental clutter. It doesn't just take up space in your mind, it steals your focus. Every time you think about something you haven't resolved, you're diverting energy from what matters most. You might think you're being productive by keeping track of everything in your head, but the truth is, you're only making it harder for yourself to make progress. You might be wondering, why does mental clutter accumulate in the first place? Why do we allow our minds to become so crowded with unfinished thoughts and unresolved issues? The answer lies in the way we process information. We live in a world that is constantly throwing new information at us. Social media, news, conversations, emails, all of these things demand our attention and take up mental space. And even though we may try to ignore or push them aside, our brains are always processing and storing this information in the background. But the real problem is that we don't always process everything in a healthy way. We put things off, hoping that they'll resolve themselves. We avoid dealing with emotions, thinking they'll go away on their own. We let small tasks pile up because we think they're not urgent enough to address right now. The result is that our minds become cluttered with unfinished business, unprocessed emotions, and a constant stream of information that we don't have the capacity to deal with. This mental clutter has a profound impact on our mental gravity. The more clutter you have, the heavier your mind feels. Every thought, every task, every unresolved issue adds weight, and the more weight you carry, the harder it is to move forward. It becomes like carrying a backpack full of rocks. Each new issue you avoid or ignore adds another rock to the pile, until eventually, the weight is so overwhelming that it feels impossible to take even a single step forward. And yet, most people continue to carry this mental weight without even realizing it. They believe they're just busy or overworked, but they don't recognize the true cause of their fatigue. It's not the number of tasks they're juggling, it's the mental clutter that's weighing them down. The more clutter you accumulate, the less energy you have for the things that really matter. Your focus becomes fragmented, your ability to make decisions diminishes, and your motivation to take action fades. It's a cycle that becomes harder and harder to break the longer you stay in it. So, what can you do about it? How do you lighten the mental load and start making real progress? The first step is to start clearing the clutter. This doesn't mean you need to address everything at once, but it does mean being intentional about what's taking up space in your mind and taking steps to resolve it. Begin by identifying the areas where clutter is building up, whether it's tasks you've been putting off, emotions you've been avoiding, or information you're holding onto without processing. Write them down, get them out of your head, and start organizing them into manageable pieces. The next step is to deal with the clutter systematically. Don't try to tackle everything at once. Instead, focus on one thing at a time and break it down into smaller, more manageable tasks. By addressing things in a focused, deliberate way, you'll start to reduce the mental weight, making it easier to move forward. Another important step is to create space for clarity. Take time to step back and reflect on your goals, your priorities, and what really matters to you. Clear your mind of unnecessary distractions and focus on what truly deserves your attention. This will not only help you make better decisions, but it will also reduce the mental noise that prevents you from staying focused. Ultimately, the key to clearing mental clutter is awareness. When you're aware of the mental weight you're carrying, you can start to take steps to address it. This means acknowledging the unfinished tasks, the unresolved emotions, and the overwhelming information you're holding on to. By bringing these things into conscious awareness, you can begin to process them in a healthy way and make space for new, more productive thoughts. As you start to clear the clutter, you'll notice something amazing. The weight of your mind will lighten. You'll find that focus becomes easier, decisions become clearer, and your ability to take action increases. The mental gravity that once held you back will begin to shift, and you'll find yourself moving forward with greater ease. The process of clearing mental clutter is ongoing. It's not something you do once and forget about. It's a habit, a mindset, a way of life that allows you to continuously reduce the weight of your mind and make space for the things that matter. But once you start this process, you'll begin to see dramatic changes in your ability to focus, to take action, and to move forward in the direction you want. Chapter 6. How internal resistance keeps you stuck. Every time you set out to do something meaningful, there's a quiet moment of hesitation. It might not always be obvious, but it's there, lurking in the background. You might even feel it before you take action, an underlying resistance to stepping forward, to making the decision, to committing. This hesitation is not laziness. It's not a lack of motivation. It's something deeper. It's internal resistance, and it's one of the most powerful forces that can keep you stuck, even when you're trying your hardest to move forward. Internal resistance doesn't make a dramatic appearance. It doesn't show up with flashing warning signs. Instead, it manifests subtly in a tension that pushes against your desires, your goals, your ambitions. It's the voice in your head telling you to wait, to second guess, to put it off until tomorrow. It's the self-doubt that creeps in when you're about to take a risk, the fear that stops you from making decisions, and the uncertainty that makes everything feel like a big question mark. This resistance is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of a mind that is uncertain, a mind that is being pulled in different directions. It's a mind that's trying to protect you from discomfort, from the unknown, from the possibility of failure. But what most people don't realize is that this resistance, this hesitation, is also keeping them trapped. It's a cycle that keeps them stuck, moving in circles, never truly progressing forward. You've probably experienced it at some point in your life. You've set a goal, made a decision, and felt the rush of ambition to get started. But then, as soon as you take the first step, something happens. The resistance shows up. It might be a wave of doubt, a thought telling you that it's not the right time, or a fear that you might fail. These thoughts are powerful, and they often make it difficult to take the next step. You start to question yourself, to hesitate, to retreat back into comfort. What's happening here is a psychological defense mechanism. The mind is trying to protect itself from the discomfort of change. Change brings uncertainty, and uncertainty is uncomfortable. So the mind resists it. It holds on to what's familiar, what's safe, even if it's not what you truly want. The problem is that by resisting change, the mind also resists growth. And without growth, you're stuck in a loop, constantly waiting for the right time, constantly hesitating, constantly thinking about what might go wrong, instead of taking the risk to move forward. But here's the thing. The resistance is not going to go away on its own. You can't simply wait for it to disappear. It's not something you can talk your way out of or push through with sheer willpower. The resistance is part of the mental environment you've created, and it's been built over time. It's built from fears, from past experiences, from old beliefs that have been ingrained in your mind, and it will continue to hold you back unless you learn how to engage with it, how to face it head on. One of the reasons why so many people get stuck in this cycle of resistance is because they misunderstand what resistance really is. Most people see it as a sign that they're doing something wrong, that they're on the wrong path. But resistance is not an indicator of failure. It's an indicator of change. Resistance shows up when you're about to step outside your comfort zone, when you're about to make a change that could take you to a new level. The more significant the change, the more resistance you'll face. But this doesn't mean you should back away. It means you're on the right path. The problem arises when you let resistance dictate your actions. When you give in to it, when you listen to the voice that tells you to wait, to avoid, to stay where it's safe, you stop moving forward. You allow the fear and uncertainty to control your behavior, and you end up trapped in the same place, unable to make progress. But what if you could engage with resistance instead of retreating from it? What if you could see resistance for what it truly is, a signal that you're about to grow, about to take a step into the unknown, about to change your life in a meaningful way? What if you could use that resistance as fuel, as motivation to push through the discomfort and move forward with confidence? This is the key to breaking the cycle of stagnation. Instead of seeing resistance as an obstacle, learn to see it as an invitation. Resistance is your mind's way of telling you that you're about to do something significant, something that will stretch you and force you to grow. And while growth might feel uncomfortable at first, it is the only way to move forward. The truth is, you don't have to eliminate resistance to make progress. You don't have to get rid of the doubts and fears. What you have to do is learn how to move forward with them, not in spite of them. You have to acknowledge the resistance, feel the discomfort, and choose to act anyway. This is how you break free from the cycle of hesitation and procrastination. This is how you rise above the internal resistance that holds you back. One of the most powerful ways to deal with internal resistance is to make a decision before the resistance has a chance to take over. The longer you wait to make a decision, the more power the resistance gains. The longer you hesitate, the more you feed the doubts and fears in your mind. But when you make a decision quickly, when you commit to action before the resistance can pull you back, you start to build momentum. You start to break through the barriers that were holding you back. The act of making a decision is a powerful one because it tells your mind that you're in control. You're not waiting for the resistance to disappear. You're not waiting for the perfect moment. You're moving forward, regardless of how you feel. And this is what separates those who succeed from those who stay stuck. Successful people are not immune to resistance. They don't feel less fear or doubt. They simply choose to move through it. They act in spite of it. But how do you build the strength to act in the face of resistance? How do you stop letting it control you? The answer lies in practice. The more you face resistance, the easier it becomes to push through it. The more you act in the face of fear, the less power fear has over you. It's a muscle that gets stronger with use. The more you practice making decisions and taking action, the more comfortable you'll become with the discomfort that comes with growth. And over time, resistance will lose its grip on you. It will become just another sign that you're on the right path, not something that holds you back. Chapter 7. The Impact of Mental Clutter. There's a certain quiet chaos in your mind, a constant hum that you've learned to ignore. It's not the kind of noise that's obvious or overwhelming. It's not the sound of sirens or alarms, not the rush of frantic thoughts racing through your head. It's much subtler than that. It's the mental clutter, the unresolved thoughts and emotions that quietly fill up the spaces in your mind. It's the tasks you've left unfinished, the conversations you've avoided, the things you've pushed to the back of your mind because they're too uncomfortable to deal with. And it's these small, unresolved pieces of mental baggage that over time accumulate and make it harder to focus, to think clearly, and to move forward. You might not even notice it at first. The mental clutter doesn't make itself known with an obvious presence. It's a slow build, like water dripping into a bucket, one drop at a time. At first it seems harmless, but as the drops continue to fall, the bucket fills, and eventually the weight of it all starts to become too much to bear. Tasks that should feel simple become overwhelming. Decisions that should be easy become paralyzing. And before you know it, you're stuck in a mental fog, unable to move forward with the clarity and focus you need. This is the cost of mental clutter. It doesn't just take up space in your mind, it takes up energy. Every unresolved thought, every unfinished task, every emotion that hasn't been processed adds weight to your mental load. And the more weight you carry, the harder it becomes to move. The more your mind is filled with distractions and unfinished business, the less energy you have to put toward the things that matter. You're constantly running on empty, trying to juggle everything at once, but never feeling like you're making any real progress. At first, the effects of mental clutter are subtle. You might find yourself distracted more often, your mind wandering as you try to focus. You might feel like you're constantly behind, always trying to catch up, but never quite getting ahead. Your to-do list keeps growing, but you never seem to make a dent in it. The harder you try to focus, the more difficult it becomes to stay on task, and eventually this constant mental strain starts to wear you down. It becomes harder to make decisions, it becomes harder to stay motivated. You find yourself avoiding tasks, putting things off until tomorrow, and then finding more things to avoid the next day. And all the while, the mental clutter keeps building. It creates an internal noise that prevents you from hearing your own thoughts clearly. It fills your mind with distractions that prevent you from being present in the moment. It creates a constant background hum that wears you down without you even realizing it. So, what's the solution? How do you clear the clutter and make space for clarity, focus, and progress? The first step is awareness. You have to recognize that the clutter is there. You have to stop pretending that your mind is clear when it's not. You have to acknowledge the unfinished tasks, the unresolved emotions, and the mental noise that's taking up space in your mind. Only when you become aware of the clutter can you start to take steps to clear it away. Once you've acknowledged the clutter, the next step is to begin sorting through it. You can't just push it aside and pretend it's not there. You have to deal with it, one piece at a time. This process might feel overwhelming at first, but it doesn't have to be. Start small. Take a few minutes each day to tackle one task, to resolve one lingering thought or emotion. Write down the things that are weighing on your mind. Organize them. Break them down into manageable pieces. By taking small steps every day, you can begin to reduce the mental clutter and create more space in your mind. Clearing mental clutter is not just about removing distractions. It's about creating an environment in your mind where you can focus on what really matters. It's about letting go of the unnecessary thoughts, tasks, and emotions that are filling up your mental space. And it's about creating the mental clarity and focus that will allow you to move forward with purpose. One of the most effective ways to clear mental clutter is through mindfulness. Mindfulness is the practice of being present in the moment, of paying attention to your thoughts and feelings without judgment or distraction. By practicing mindfulness, you can begin to separate yourself from the mental clutter and observe it from a distance. Instead of getting caught up in the noise, you can watch it without reacting. You can see it for what it is, just thoughts and emotions that are passing through your mind, and let them go. Mindfulness allows you to create space in your mind, space that is free from distractions and clutter. It helps you focus on the present moment, to be more aware of your thoughts and actions. And the more you practice mindfulness, the easier it becomes to stay present, to stay focused, and to move forward with clarity. Another important step in clearing mental clutter is simplifying your environment. Your external environment has a significant impact on your internal environment. If your physical space is cluttered and disorganized, your mind will reflect that. When your surroundings are chaotic, it becomes harder to focus and think clearly. The same is true for your digital environment. The constant stream of information from your phone, computer, and social media can create mental overload and make it difficult to stay focused on what matters. Take some time to declutter your space. Organize your desk, clear your email inbox, and reduce the distractions in your environment. The cleaner and more organized your space is, the clearer your mind will feel. A simple, uncluttered environment creates mental clarity and allows you to focus on the tasks that matter most. As you begin to clear the clutter, you'll notice a shift. You'll feel lighter, more focused, and more energized. You'll find that tasks that once felt overwhelming are now manageable. Your mind will no longer be bogged down by distractions and unfinished business. You have the mental space to think clearly, make decisions with confidence, and take meaningful action toward your goals. But clearing mental clutter is not a one-time task. It's an ongoing process. As you move forward in life, new clutter will inevitably accumulate. New tasks, new challenges, new emotions. The key is to stay aware of the clutter and take steps to address it regularly. Set aside time each day to declutter your mind, to resolve any lingering thoughts or tasks, and to clear the space in your head. The more you practice, the easier it will become to maintain a clear, focused mind. Mental clutter is not something you can just ignore. It's a weight that holds you back, prevents you from moving forward, and drains your energy. But once you become aware of it and begin to take action to clear it, you'll notice a remarkable difference in how you feel, how you think, and how you move through life. You'll feel lighter, more focused, and more capable of achieving the things that matter to you. The clutter will no longer control you. You'll be free to move forward with clarity and purpose. Chapter 8. The illusion of readiness. There's a myth that most people buy into at some point in their lives, that there's a moment when everything will finally feel ready. A moment when all the doubts will disappear, when the timing will be perfect, when you will finally feel confident enough to act. The truth, however, is much more complicated. Readiness is not a feeling that arrives out of nowhere. It's not something you can wait for. The idea that there will be a right time is one of the most powerful illusions that keeps people stuck. The problem with waiting for readiness is that it leads to an endless cycle of hesitation and inaction. You keep telling yourself, I'll start when I feel more prepared, I'll take the leap when everything falls into place, or I'll make the move once I'm more confident. The truth is, readiness is not something that just happens. It's something you create by taking action, even when you don't feel fully ready. We've all experienced this at some point. We have a dream or a goal that we want to pursue, but there's always a sense of doubt that holds us back. Maybe it's fear of failure, fear of making the wrong decision, or fear of not being good enough. Whatever it is, it convinces us to wait. We wait until we feel more confident. We wait until the timing feels right, but the longer we wait, the more we reinforce the belief that we're not ready. The mental resistance grows, and the task we once felt eager to pursue becomes something we feel overwhelmed by. This waiting for readiness is not a conscious decision, but it is a deeply ingrained pattern that many people fall into. It's easy to think that you're being responsible, thoughtful, and strategic by waiting for the right moment. But in reality, you're only creating more resistance. The longer you wait, the harder it becomes to act. The fear and doubt you feel become more intense. Your internal environment becomes heavier. You begin to doubt your own ability to succeed, and that doubt makes it even more difficult to take action. The key to breaking free from this cycle is realizing that readiness is a byproduct of action, not something that comes before it. In fact, taking action is often the thing that makes you feel ready. The more you practice, the more you learn, and the more you experience, the more confident you become. It's through taking those first steps, even when you're not sure of the outcome, that you start to build the momentum and clarity you need to succeed. Consider the example of learning a new skill. Think about how overwhelming it might feel to try something new. You might think, I'm not ready for this. I need more time to prepare, more time to learn, more time to feel confident. But the truth is, the only way to gain proficiency in something is by doing it. You can't wait for the perfect moment, because that moment will never come. Instead, you have to dive in, face the discomfort, and start somewhere, no matter how imperfect the beginning might seem. Once you start, things begin to shift. As you face the resistance, you begin to grow. You gain experience. You start to understand what works and what doesn't. You develop the skills you need, not because you were ready, but because you took action in spite of not feeling ready. And with each action you take, the mental gravity that once held you back begins to lighten. What felt like a monumental challenge becomes manageable. You feel yourself rising. Waiting for the feeling of readiness only creates more resistance because it keeps you in a state of inertia. The more you wait, the more you convince yourself that you're not capable, that you need more time, more preparation. You end up stuck in a loop of overthinking and underdoing. The key to breaking free from this cycle is recognizing that readiness isn't something you feel in advance. It's something you create through your actions. Think about the things you've done in your life that once seemed daunting. Maybe you started a new job, moved to a new city, or took on a challenging project. In the beginning, you probably felt uncertain. You might have questioned your ability to succeed. But once you took the first step, you began to build confidence. You learned the ropes, figured things out along the way, and grew into the role. The same principle applies to every area of life. The more you do, the more capable you become. This doesn't mean that every action will lead to instant success. There will be failures, missteps, and setbacks. But it's through those failures that you learn and grow. Every misstep is an opportunity to improve. Every failure is a lesson that gets you closer to the person you need to become to succeed. But without taking action, you'll never get to the point where those lessons are learned. You'll stay stuck in the same place waiting for readiness to appear, while the opportunity to grow slips further away. To make progress, you must learn to push through the resistance. To act, even when you don't feel ready. The feeling of readiness is a result of action, not the other way around. When you move forward, even with uncertainty, the resistance that once held you back begins to dissipate. Your confidence grows, your skills improve, your capacity to handle challenges increases, and what once seemed impossible becomes part of your reality. It's easy to fall into the trap of waiting for the perfect moment. We've all done it, waiting until we feel more prepared, more confident, more sure of ourselves. But the truth is, that moment doesn't exist. The only moment you have is the one you're in right now. And if you want to make progress, you have to act in the face of uncertainty. You have to step forward and trust that with each step, you will learn and grow. Chapter 9. Why mental clutter makes everything harder. It starts with a single thought. It seems harmless at first, just one thing that pops into your mind, a memory, a task you need to complete, something you've been meaning to do. But it doesn't stop there. Soon another thought follows, then another, and another, until your mind is cluttered with fragments of everything: unresolved thoughts, distractions, emotional baggage, and pending tasks. It's not loud, it's not overwhelming at first, but over time, this mental clutter builds, and you begin to feel the weight of it. It's like trying to carry a bag that starts out light, but grows heavier with every added item. Eventually, the load becomes so much that every task, every decision, every action feels harder than it should be. The issue with mental clutter is that it doesn't just take up space in your mind, it consumes your energy. Every time you allow a thought to linger without addressing it, it drains you. Your brain continues to process these incomplete tasks and unresolved issues in the background, using up cognitive resources. You may not consciously be aware of it, but each fragmented thought adds to the weight that you carry, making it harder to focus on what matters most. The more clutter you accumulate, the harder it becomes to concentrate, to think clearly, and to make decisions. In a world where we're constantly bombarded with information, it's easy to let mental clutter accumulate. There's always something to think about, always something to worry about, always something to get done. But the reality is that much of what fills our minds isn't urgent or important. It's just noise. The clutter that fills your mind isn't necessarily composed of tasks or responsibilities that need your immediate attention. A lot of it consists of incomplete thoughts, things you've left unresolved, conversations you haven't finished, decisions you've put off. And the more you avoid dealing with them, the more they pile up in your mind. This clutter doesn't just stay in one place, it spreads across every area of your life. Your work, your relationships, your health. It all gets tangled together in the web of unresolved thoughts and tasks. You think you're managing things, but in reality, your mental energy is divided across multiple things, none of which you can fully give your attention to. Your focus is fragmented, your energy spread thin, and you end up feeling stuck, unable to make any meaningful progress. At first, you may think you can push through it. You tell yourself that you'll just work harder or that you'll deal with the clutter later. But the longer you ignore it, the more overwhelming it becomes. And the more you ignore the clutter, the more it begins to take control of your thoughts, your actions, and your life. Mental clutter doesn't just make you feel tired. It makes everything harder. It makes decisions harder to make, actions harder to take, and progress harder to achieve. It creates resistance in your mind, resistance that prevents you from moving forward. Imagine trying to do something simple, something that should take only a few minutes. But as soon as you start, your mind is filled with distractions, a task from work that you haven't finished, a conversation you need to have, something you promised to do but haven't gotten around to. Instead of focusing on the task at hand, you're pulled in different directions. Each thought seems small, insignificant even, but together they create a mental weight that makes even the simplest tasks feel overwhelming. What should have been a quick, easy task turns into a battle against your own mind. This is the impact of mental clutter. It clouds your judgment, disrupts your focus, and makes everything feel like it requires more effort than it should. It's a hidden barrier that stands in your way, not just in your ability to get things done, but in your ability to enjoy life and feel at peace. Your mind becomes a place of constant noise, a place where clarity is elusive and the weight of your thoughts is always present. The good news is that you don't have to live with this clutter. You don't have to keep carrying the mental weight that slows you down and holds you back. The process of clearing mental clutter starts with awareness. The first step is recognizing that it's there, acknowledging that your mind is full of incomplete thoughts, unprocessed emotions, and unresolved tasks. Once you realize how much mental clutter you're carrying, you can begin to take steps to address it. The key to clearing mental clutter is to stop letting these thoughts accumulate in your mind without resolution. The more you leave things unresolved, the more they pile up, creating a heavier mental load. But by addressing them one by one, you can begin to lighten the load and make space in your mind for what matters most. Start by organizing your thoughts. Write down the things that are taking up space in your mind, the tasks you need to do, the decisions you've been avoiding, the conversations you haven't had. Once you have them written down, they're no longer just floating around in your head. You can see them clearly, and you can start to prioritize them. Breaking down mental clutter into tangible tasks gives you the ability to take action. You can focus on one thing at a time, instead of trying to juggle everything at once. Another effective way to clear mental clutter is by addressing unresolved emotions. Emotions that haven't been processed properly, whether they're fear, frustration, sadness, or anger add to the weight in your mind. These emotions don't just disappear if you ignore them. They linger, creating internal resistance and making it harder to focus. Acknowledging your emotions and giving yourself permission to feel them is an important part of clearing mental clutter. When you allow yourself to process emotions, you release the tension they create, and your mind becomes clearer. It's also important to recognize that not everything in your life requires your immediate attention. You don't need to keep every single task, thought, or worry in your mind at all times. You have the ability to compartmentalize. The things that don't need your attention right now can be set aside and dealt with later. You don't need to hold on to everything at once. Learning to prioritize and let go of the less important things is essential for clearing mental clutter and reducing mental weight. Another aspect of mental clutter that's often overlooked is the impact of the digital world. Constant notifications, emails, social media updates, and the never-ending stream of information can contribute significantly to mental clutter. Your mind is constantly bombarded with new data, new tasks, new thoughts to process. The result is mental overload. Taking regular breaks from technology and setting boundaries around your digital consumption can help reduce the clutter and give your mind the space it needs to focus. As you begin to clear mental clutter, you'll notice a shift. Tasks that once felt overwhelming start to feel manageable. Decisions become easier to make, your focus becomes sharper, and your energy begins to return. The mental noise quiets, and you can think more clearly. The weight that was once dragging you down begins to lift, and suddenly, everything seems more achievable. Clearing mental clutter is not a one-time event. It's an ongoing process that requires regular attention. Just as your physical space needs maintenance, so does your mental space. But by making it a habit to regularly clear out the clutter, you can maintain a clear, focused mind that is free from the distractions and weight that once held you back. The more you practice clearing your mind, the easier it becomes, and the more space you create for clarity, focus, and growth. Chapter 10. The Power of Attention. Your attention is one of the most powerful resources you have. It is the key to everything you do. The tasks you complete, the decisions you make, the progress you achieve, everything depends on where your attention is focused. And yet in today's world, attention is in short supply. It's constantly pulled in different directions, fragmented and distracted by the endless stream of information that surrounds us. It's no wonder that many of us feel mentally exhausted, overwhelmed, and unable to make meaningful progress. Our attention is being hijacked. The thing about attention is that it feels infinite. At least it should. When you focus on something, it feels like you have all the time in the world. But in reality, attention is a limited resource. Each time you shift your focus, whether it's to check your phone, respond to a text, or even just to think about something unrelated, you're using up mental energy. The more you switch between tasks, the more you drain your ability to concentrate. The more your attention is split, the less power it has. This is why multitasking, which feels productive, is actually one of the biggest productivity killers. It's like trying to drive a car with the handbrake on. You're still moving, but you're not getting anywhere fast. Every time you're distracted, you lose momentum. When you're trying to focus on a task, but find your mind wandering, you're not just wasting time, you're wasting mental energy. It takes time to get back into the flow of the task you were working on. Each time you switch focus, it costs you. And over time, this constant shifting between tasks creates a feeling of mental overload. You begin to feel like you're doing a lot, but making little progress. This is the result of your attention being divided, not just externally, but internally as well. Most of the time, distractions don't seem significant. You check your phone for a minute, glance at an email, or scroll through social media. You think it's just a brief moment of diversion, a small break to reset. But these brief distractions add up. When you break your attention, it's not like you're simply losing a moment of time. You're losing the energy it takes to refocus. You're wasting precious mental resources. And the more distracted you are, the more fragmented your thoughts become, and the less mental clarity you have to move forward with the task at hand. What's even more frustrating is that distractions are everywhere. We live in a world that's designed to keep our attention on everything but what's important. Notifications from apps, emails, text messages, social media updates, each one pulls at your attention, even if you don't realize it. This constant bombardment of distractions not only takes up your time, but it also erodes your mental bandwidth. Every time you're interrupted, your brain has to adjust and recalibrate, which takes energy. It's no wonder that at the end of the day you feel mentally drained, even if you haven't done anything particularly taxing. This constant influx of distractions is a major contributor to mental clutter. Every time you allow your attention to be hijacked, it adds another layer to the noise in your mind. And over time, that noise builds up, creating a sense of overwhelm and making it harder to focus on the things that truly matter. But the good news is, you have control over your attention. You can train yourself to be more intentional with where you place your focus. By understanding how distractions affect your mental state and taking steps to protect your attention, you can regain control over your mind and start making meaningful progress. The first step to managing your attention is recognizing the distractions for what they are. The more you understand how distractions affect your focus, the easier it becomes to avoid them. The world around us is full of distractions, but we don't have to give in to them. We have the power to choose where our attention goes. And once we take control of that, we take control of our mental space. One of the simplest yet most powerful ways to regain control of your attention is to reduce external distractions. Turn off notifications on your phone, close unnecessary tabs on your computer, and set aside time each day to focus on a single task without interruption. By eliminating the constant stream of distractions, you create an environment where your mind can focus on one thing at a time. This is the foundation of deep work, concentrating on a task without the temptation to switch gears or check your phone. When you eliminate distractions, your attention can flow freely, and you can accomplish more in less time. But external distractions are only part of the problem. Internal distractions, such as worries, fears, and negative thoughts, are often even more powerful. These internal distractions pull your attention away from the present moment and keep you mentally stuck in the past or the future. You might find yourself ruminating on something that happened earlier in the day, or worrying about something that hasn't even happened yet. These thoughts take up mental space, and the more energy you give them, the less energy you have for the task at hand. Learning to manage internal distractions is just as important as managing external ones. This is where mindfulness comes in. Mindfulness is the practice of being fully present in the moment without judgment or distraction. It's about observing your thoughts without getting caught up in them. When you practice mindfulness, you train your mind to stay focused on what's happening right now instead of letting your thoughts pull you in different directions. This helps to reduce the mental clutter and brings clarity and focus back into your mind. Another technique to manage internal distractions is to break tasks into smaller, more manageable chunks. When a task feels overwhelming, your mind is more likely to wander, looking for something easier to focus on. By breaking the task down into smaller steps, you make it feel more achievable. Each time you complete one of these smaller steps, you get a sense of accomplishment, which builds momentum and keeps you focused. This process reduces the mental resistance that often leads to distractions and makes it easier to stay on track. Once you start managing your attention more effectively, you'll begin to notice a shift in how you work and think. Tasks that once felt overwhelming will start to feel more manageable. You'll find yourself completing things more quickly and with less effort. Your mind will become clearer and your focus will become sharper. The mental clutter will start to dissipate and you'll be able to focus on what truly matters. But this process takes time and practice. It's not something that happens overnight. Distractions are deeply ingrained in our daily lives, and it takes conscious effort to break the habit of constantly shifting your attention. But the more you practice, the easier it becomes. The more you protect your attention, the more power you'll have to focus on what matters and move forward with your goals. The most important thing to remember is that your attention is a finite resource. The more intentional you are with where you place your focus, the more energy you'll have to dedicate to the things that matter. Distractions are inevitable, but you don't have to let them control you. By taking control of your attention, you can reduce mental clutter, improve your focus, and start making real progress towards your goals. Chapter 11. The role of emotional regulation. Emotions are a powerful force. They guide us, shape our decisions, and influence how we experience the world. For many people, emotions are the source of much of their mental clutter. We all experience moments where our emotions take the wheel, steering our thoughts and actions in directions that seem beyond our control. It's not always obvious, but unchecked emotions can significantly impact how effectively we work, how we focus, and how we deal with the challenges that come our way. The relationship between emotions and mental clarity is one that many overlook, but it's one that can either lighten or add weight to the mental environment we live in. When we allow our emotions to control us, we become reactive. Our thoughts and actions are driven by feelings of anxiety, fear, frustration, or excitement, and our mental clarity suffers. In contrast, when we learn how to manage and regulate our emotions, we can maintain a sense of calm and control, even in the face of challenges. Emotional regulation is not about suppressing emotions or pretending they don't exist. It's about understanding and managing them in a way that doesn't overwhelm us. Many people believe that emotions are something that just happen to them, that we are at the mercy of how we feel in any given moment. We've all experienced times when emotions seem to take over. A sudden rush of anger, a wave of sadness, or a burst of anxiety can send us into a mental tailspin. And when these emotions overwhelm us, they make it difficult to think clearly or stay focused. We become distracted, unable to perform tasks effectively, and often we make decisions driven by emotions that later leave us feeling regretful. This is where emotional regulation becomes essential. It's important to realize that emotions, in and of themselves, are not bad. They are natural responses to the world around us. Fear alerts us to danger. Sadness helps us process loss. Joy motivates us to continue, and anger can give us the energy to confront injustice. But when these emotions go unchecked, when they control us rather than inform us, they become disruptive forces in our lives. The key is not to suppress emotions or ignore them, but to acknowledge them and manage their impact on our thoughts and actions. Think about a time when you let a strong emotion, whether it was fear, frustration, or even excitement, control your response to a situation. Maybe it was an argument where anger led you to say something you didn't mean. Or perhaps it was a moment of fear that caused you to avoid a decision you knew was important. In those moments, your emotional state clouded your judgment. You weren't making decisions with a clear mind, you were making them through the lens of emotion, and that's where emotional regulation comes in. The ability to separate the emotion from the action, to respond with intention rather than reaction. The first step in regulating your emotions is awareness. You must be able to recognize when your emotions are starting to take over. Most of us don't realize how often we react emotionally until after the fact. By developing a greater awareness of your emotional responses, you begin to notice when your feelings are starting to hijack your focus or decision-making. Awareness allows you to pause, take a breath, and create space between feeling and action. Once you're aware of the emotion, the next step is acceptance. This means acknowledging that the emotion is there without judgment. Far too often people try to suppress their feelings because they think emotions like anger, sadness, or fear are bad or wrong. But emotions are simply signals. They are a natural part of the human experience. Trying to fight or suppress them only makes them more intense. Instead, practice accepting your emotions as they come. Understand that it's okay to feel anger or sadness or frustration. These feelings are natural, and there's no need to push them away. The key is not to let them control you. Once you've acknowledged and accepted the emotion, the next step is to express it in a healthy way. Emotions need to be processed, not bottled up. If you feel angry, express it by talking to someone you trust, by journaling about it, or by engaging in physical activity. If you feel anxious, find ways to calm your mind, whether it's through meditation, deep breathing, or simply stepping away from the situation. The goal is to release the emotional charge in a way that doesn't harm yourself or others. When emotions are expressed in healthy ways, they lose their power to overwhelm your thoughts and actions. One of the most powerful ways to regulate your emotions is to reframe them. Reframing involves changing the way you think about a situation. Instead of seeing it through the lens of frustration or fear, you shift your perspective to something more empowering. For example, if you're anxious about a task, instead of focusing on the fear of failure, you can reframe it as an opportunity to grow. If you're angry, you can shift your thinking from blaming others to recognizing how you can take control of the situation. Reframing doesn't deny the emotion, it acknowledges it while shifting the focus to something more constructive. One key aspect of emotional regulation is developing emotional resilience. Life is full of ups and downs, and emotions are inevitable. But what separates those who thrive from those who struggle is resilience, the ability to bounce back from emotional setbacks without allowing them to derail progress. Emotional resilience doesn't mean being unaffected by life's challenges. It means being able to process those challenges in a healthy way, learn from them, and move forward with clarity and focus. Developing emotional resilience requires practice. It's about building the mental and emotional strength to weather life's storms without losing your sense of direction. It involves learning to manage stress, accepting that you can't control everything, and focusing on what you can control: your actions, your reactions, and your mindset. As you build emotional resilience, you become better equipped to handle challenges and setbacks without allowing them to throw you off course. Mental clarity and emotional regulation. The connection between emotional regulation and mental clarity is undeniable. When your emotions are in balance, your mind is clearer. The emotional clutter that often clouds your thinking begins to dissipate, making it easier to focus on the present moment and the tasks at hand. When you're able to manage your emotions, you're better able to stay present and fully engaged in your work and your relationships. Clarity comes not from eliminating emotions, but from learning how to deal with them in a way that doesn't overwhelm your thoughts. The more you practice emotional regulation, the easier it becomes to stay calm and focused, even in the midst of difficult situations. You become more intentional in your actions and decisions, rather than reacting emotionally. This allows you to move through life with greater confidence, resilience, and peace of mind. Why emotional regulation is the key to mental freedom. Emotional regulation is the foundation of mental freedom. When you're able to manage your emotions, you regain control over your thoughts, actions, and reactions. You stop letting your emotions dictate your decisions, and instead, you respond with intention. This mental freedom gives you the ability to focus, to be productive, and to take action without being weighed down by emotional turbulence. One of the most empowering realizations is that you don't have to be at the mercy of your emotions. You don't have to let fear, anger, or anxiety control your decisions. You have the power to regulate your emotions and, in doing so, create a clear, focused mind that is free to move forward. The more you practice this skill, the more you'll notice how your mental gravity lightens. You'll find it easier to think clearly, make decisions, and stay on track, no matter what life throws your way. Chapter 12. The Power of Habits. We all have habits. Some of them are small, seemingly insignificant actions, like the way we wake up in the morning, the routine we follow before bed, or the way we handle stress. Others are larger, more intentional, like the way we approach our work, our relationships, or our health. These habits, big and small, create the framework for our daily lives. They shape how we move through the world, how we react to challenges, and how we make decisions. And as much as we might want to think that we're in control of our actions, our habits have a much stronger influence on us than we often realize. Habits don't just affect the things we do, they shape the way we think, the way we feel, and the way we experience life. The small repetitive actions we take each day create patterns in our minds that influence how we perceive ourselves and the world around us. When we develop positive habits that align with our values, our goals, and our long-term vision, they can propel us forward, making success feel more natural and effortless. But when our habits are out of alignment with what we truly want, they become mental anchors, pulling us down and creating resistance that we have to work against every day. The power of habits lies in their ability to create mental momentum. When you consistently take small actions in the direction of your goals, they begin to compound over time. You don't see it at first, but slowly, these actions build upon one another. Eventually, what once felt like a struggle becomes second nature. Positive habits build mental clarity and focus, creating an internal environment that supports progress, while negative habits clutter the mind, increase resistance, and slow down momentum. The key to understanding the role of habits in mental gravity is recognizing how they contribute to either weight or lift. Just as a heavy object creates resistance in physical space, mental habits can create resistance in your mind. Every habit, whether it's productive or not, adds to your mental environment. And just as physical gravity makes it harder for you to move upward, mental gravity makes it harder for you to move forward. When your habits support your goals, whether that's waking up early, exercising, practicing mindfulness, or focusing on one task at a time, you reduce mental gravity. You create the conditions for clarity, focus, and progress. You stop wasting energy on distractions and bad habits, and instead, you channel your mental energy toward the things that matter most. You build momentum, and with it, a sense of ease that makes moving forward feel natural. But when your habits are misaligned, when you spend too much time in reactive mode, when you procrastinate, or when you let distractions take over, mental gravity increases. Every time you fail to follow through on your goals, every time you indulge in procrastination or mindless distractions, you add weight to your mental load. It becomes harder to focus, harder to act, and harder to make decisions. You begin to feel overwhelmed by the sheer number of things you have to do, and it becomes increasingly difficult to make any meaningful progress. This dynamic is especially powerful when it comes to habits that don't seem to matter much in the moment. It's easy to ignore the small habits, the occasional late night, the skipped workout, the "I'll just check my phone for 5 minutes" moments. But these small habits add up over time, and they begin to shape your mental environment in ways that you might not notice until it's too late. Each small act of procrastination, each moment of distraction, each piece of mental clutter adds to the mental weight you're carrying. But here's the key. The power of habits is not just in their ability to create momentum in one direction or another. It's in their predictability. Once a habit is formed, it becomes automatic. You don't have to think about it. It just happens. This is why habits are so important. They determine to a large extent what your daily life will look like. They shape your decisions without you even realizing it. Your habits dictate how much energy you spend on things that matter and how much energy is wasted on things that don't. Think about it. Every time you decide to check your phone instead of focusing on the task in front of you, you're reinforcing a habit of distraction. Every time you skip a workout because you're too busy or too tired, you're reinforcing a habit of avoidance. These habits, while small on their own, accumulate, and over time, they create a mental environment that's cluttered, reactive, and resistant to change. On the other hand, when you develop habits that support your mental clarity, such as taking regular breaks, prioritizing important tasks, practicing mindfulness, all working on one thing at a time, you reduce mental clutter and increase mental focus. These habits shift your mental environment from one of resistance to one of ease. You stop fighting against your mind's natural tendency to distract itself, and instead, you align your habits with the kind of thinking and behavior that supports your goals. It's important to understand that habits are not created overnight. They take time to develop. The first step is simply awareness. You need to recognize the habits that are contributing to your mental clutter and resistance. Identify the habits that are holding you back, and then start small. Focus on one habit at a time. Choose one area of your life where you feel the most mental resistance and begin to create a new habit in that area. Maybe it's waking up earlier. Maybe it's taking a break from social media. Maybe it's setting aside time each day to plan your next steps. Whatever it is, start small and stay consistent. As you begin to implement these new habits, be patient with yourself. You won't see results overnight. You might slip up or lose focus from time to time, but as long as you continue to show up and commit to your new habits, they will begin to build momentum. Slowly, you will notice a shift in how you feel. Your mental clarity will improve, your focus will sharpen, and, most importantly, you will feel lighter. Your mental gravity will decrease, and the weight that once held you back will start to lift. It's not about perfection, it's about consistency. Every small step you take in the right direction makes a difference, and over time the compounding effect of your positive habits will propel you forward, creating the mental space you need to focus on what matters most. The more you practice, the more these habits will become second nature. Eventually, the habits that once required conscious effort will feel automatic, and the mental environment you've created will support your growth, focus, and progress. You'll be able to tackle challenges with greater ease, and the resistance you once felt will start to melt away. Chapter 13. The Power of Clear Goals. When you think about your future, what comes to mind? What do you imagine achieving? It's easy to get caught up in the rush of daily tasks and responsibilities, but without a clear vision of where you're going, it's easy to end up wandering aimlessly, feeling like you're moving but not getting anywhere. The difference between those who make progress and those who remain stuck is not always about effort. It's about clarity. When you have clear goals, everything you do is directed towards something meaningful. Your actions become purposeful, and your efforts are aligned with your true desires. Setting clear goals is one of the most important things you can do to create the mental environment you need to succeed. Without goals, you're like a ship without a rudder, drifting aimlessly on the water. But with clear, intentional goals, you create a sense of direction. You give yourself something to aim for, something to work toward. And the power of clarity in goal setting is not just in the destination, it's in the journey. Without clear goals, everything you do feels like it could be leading to something, but you never quite know what. You may find yourself putting in effort day after day without seeing any real progress. Your energy feels scattered, and your actions feel like they're not adding up to anything substantial. This is because, without a goal, you lack a clear target to focus on. You're putting in the effort, but the effort isn't aligned with a specific outcome. The problem is, we often think of goals in the wrong way. We think of them as distant achievements, something far off in the future. We imagine the outcome. Whether it's a career milestone, a financial target, or personal growth, and focus all our energy on the end result. But this creates a disconnect between where you are now and where you want to be. It's easy to get discouraged when you focus too much on the future and not enough on the steps you need to take today. The truth is that the most powerful goals are those that are specific, actionable, and aligned with your current circumstances. These are the goals that give you direction and purpose in the present moment. Clear goals are not just about the finish line, they are about creating a path to get there, one step at a time. When you break down your long-term dreams into smaller, manageable tasks, you not only make them more achievable, you also create a sense of momentum. The key to setting clear goals is clarity. The more specific and measurable your goals are, the easier it is to create a plan of action. Instead of just saying, "I want to be successful," or "I want to get fit," define what success and fitness mean to you. How will you measure success? What does being fit look like? The more specific you can be about what you want, the more you can tailor your actions to make that goal a reality. Once you have clear, specific goals, you can begin to break them down into smaller tasks. Large, vague goals are easy to put off because they feel too overwhelming. But when you break them down into actionable steps, you can focus on what's in front of you right now. You know exactly what to do next, and you don't waste mental energy trying to figure it out. Each small task becomes a building block, moving you one step closer to your ultimate goal. And with each step, you build momentum. With momentum comes confidence, and with confidence comes the energy to keep going. Clear goals also give you the ability to measure progress. Without a clear goal, it's easy to feel like you're spinning your wheels, putting in effort without seeing any real results. But when you have a specific target, you can track your progress, celebrate small wins, and adjust your approach when needed. This is crucial for maintaining motivation over the long term. When you see that your efforts are actually moving you towards something, it reinforces your commitment and fuels your drive to keep going. One of the biggest obstacles people face when setting goals is fear of not being able to achieve them. Fear of failure or fear of the unknown. But the only way to move past this fear is to take the first step. Often, we put off setting clear goals because we don't know exactly how we're going to get there. We're afraid of making the wrong decision or failing along the way. But the truth is, no one has all the answers at the start. The key is to start anyway. When you take that first step, you not only begin to make progress, but you also start to build clarity around what works and what doesn't. The path to your goal may not always be clear, but by taking action, you'll uncover the path one step at a time. Setting clear goals doesn't mean that the journey will be easy. There will be setbacks, challenges, and moments when you want to give up. But having a clear goal gives you a reason to keep going. It provides a sense of purpose that can keep you motivated when things get tough. Even on the days when progress feels slow, knowing that you are moving towards something meaningful will help you stay focused and keep moving forward. The process of setting and achieving clear goals also helps to build mental resilience. Every time you set a goal and take steps toward it, you are building the mental muscle to handle challenges. We're learning how to push through resistance, how to stay focused, and how to keep going even when you encounter obstacles. This mental resilience will serve you in all areas of your life. It will help you stay committed to your goals, no matter how tough the journey gets. And it will make you more adaptable when things don't go according to plan. Another powerful aspect of goal setting is the sense of fulfillment that comes with achieving something meaningful. When you achieve a goal, no matter how small, it reinforces your belief in your own ability to succeed. It boosts your confidence and motivates you to keep striving for bigger and better things. This feeling of accomplishment is one of the most rewarding aspects of setting clear goals because it provides tangible evidence of your growth and progress. However, achieving your goals requires more than just effort. It requires focus. When you set clear goals, you must also learn how to prioritize your time and energy. There will always be distractions, always be other things pulling your attention. But when your goals are clear, it becomes easier to say no to the things that don't align with your purpose. You learn how to focus on what matters and let go of what doesn't. This focus is what allows you to make progress, even when the path feels difficult or uncertain. The process of setting clear goals is not a one-time event. It's an ongoing practice. As you achieve one goal, you set another. And as you grow, your goals will evolve. The key is to continue setting goals that align with your values, your aspirations, and your long-term vision. By consistently setting and achieving goals, you build momentum, confidence, and mental clarity. And over time, the weight of mental gravity lessens, and the path to success becomes clearer and more achievable. Chapter 14. The Influence of Your Environment. There's an old saying, "You are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with." But while the people around you certainly have an impact on your life, your environment, the spaces you live and work in, has an even deeper effect on your mental state, your focus, and your overall ability to succeed. Your environment is like the stage in which your life plays out. It affects how you feel, how you think, and how much energy you have to give to the things that matter most. And just like a stage set for a play, the environment can either uplift or weigh down the performance. We often think of ourselves as independent of our surroundings, as if we can function without being affected by the places and people around us. But the reality is that your environment is one of the most powerful forces in your life. It shapes your thoughts, influences your habits, and determines how easily you can focus and make progress. The more cluttered, chaotic, and distracting your environment, the more mental weight you carry. And the more streamlined, peaceful, and intentional your environment, the easier it becomes to rise above mental gravity and focus on what truly matters. Imagine trying to work in a cluttered, noisy room. Papers everywhere, your phone constantly buzzing with notifications, people talking in the background. Your mind is bombarded with stimuli, pulling your attention in every direction. It's exhausting. And no matter how hard you try to focus, the weight of the distractions makes it nearly impossible to get anything done. Now imagine a different scenario. You walk into a clean, quiet space. There's nothing to distract you. The air feels clear, your desk is organized, and your phone is set aside. Suddenly you feel lighter. The mental fog lifts, and you can focus. You feel energized, ready to dive into the work ahead of you. The environment you're in has made all the difference. The power of environment is often overlooked, but it's crucial to understand. It's not just about the physical space around you, it's about how that space affects your mental clarity, your focus, and your ability to make progress. The clutter in your room or office is just the physical manifestation of the clutter in your mind. When your environment is chaotic, it's harder to think clearly, to stay focused, and to take decisive action. On the other hand, when your environment is organized and aligned with your goals, it becomes a tool that supports your progress. It reduces friction and allows you to move through tasks with ease. The connection between your environment and mental clarity is not just about physical order. It's also about the energy of the space. When you enter a room, you feel its energy. It's subtle but real. The people, the light, the colors, the sounds, they all contribute to the overall atmosphere of the space. Some environments make you feel calm and inspired, while others make you feel stressed, distracted, or drained. Your environment can either amplify your energy or drain it. This is why it's essential to be intentional about the spaces you inhabit, whether it's your home, your office, or even the places where you spend your free time. Your environment has the power to shape your mental state. If your environment is cluttered with things that don't serve you, objects that remind you of unfinished tasks, negative energy from people, or distractions like noise and technology, it becomes harder to focus, to feel clear, and to take action. You may feel overwhelmed without even realizing why. But when your environment is intentional, when it's structured in a way that aligns with your values, your goals, and your mental needs, it becomes a powerful ally. It becomes a space that nurtures your growth, clears away distractions, and creates the mental space you need to focus and make progress. It's not just about physical organization. It's about creating an environment that supports the kind of thinking and behavior that will lead you to success. One of the first steps in creating an environment that helps you succeed is to declutter. Start with your physical space. Clear off your desk, organize your files, and remove anything that doesn't serve your purpose. It may seem like a small thing, but the act of decluttering can have a profound effect on your mental clarity. When you clear away the physical clutter, you make space for focused thought. Your mind doesn't have to constantly scan the environment for distractions. Everything has its place, and you can focus on what matters. But physical decluttering is just one part of the equation. You also need to consider the emotional energy of your environment, the people you spend time with, the conversations you have, the way you spend your time. All of these factors influence your mental state. If you're constantly surrounded by negativity, criticism, or conflict, it becomes much harder to maintain a positive, productive mindset. But if you surround yourself with people who support your goals, who encourage your growth, and who inspire you to be your best, your environment becomes a source of strength. Sometimes the best way to improve your environment is to limit exposure to negativity. This might mean distancing yourself from people who drain your energy or cutting back on activities that leave you feeling mentally exhausted. It might mean setting boundaries around how much time you spend on social media or news consumption. The world can be a noisy, chaotic place, and it's easy to get swept up in the distractions. But by creating boundaries and limiting exposure to negative influences, you can preserve your mental energy and focus on what truly matters. Another powerful tool in creating a supportive environment is ritual. Rituals are the small, intentional actions we take each day to set the tone for our day, to bring clarity, and to create focus. This could be a morning routine, a moment of mindfulness, or a specific way you prepare for a task. The key is consistency. By creating rituals that align with your goals, you create a sense of structure and purpose in your day. Rituals help you transition from one task to another, providing a mental cue that it's time to focus. They remove the friction of decision-making and allow you to step into a state of flow more easily. The power of environment also extends to how you manage your time and attention. Time is the most valuable resource we have, and where you direct your attention is where your energy flows. If you allow yourself to be constantly distracted, if you let your attention be hijacked by notifications, interruptions, and random thoughts, your mental energy is scattered. But if you create a space where you can control your time and attention, where you focus on one thing at a time, free from distractions, your environment becomes a place where mental clarity thrives. This is why creating an environment that supports focus is so important. It's not just about removing physical distractions. It's about creating the mental space you need to think deeply, to engage fully, and to work without resistance. The fewer distractions you allow into your environment, the more mental bandwidth you free up. The more mental bandwidth you have, the easier it becomes to stay focused, make decisions, and take meaningful action. But creating this kind of environment takes work. It's not something that happens overnight. It's an ongoing process of decluttering, limiting distractions, and surrounding yourself with the people, the spaces, and the energy that align with your goals. The more intentional you are with your environment, the easier it becomes to achieve your goals, stay focused, and move forward with purpose. Chapter 15. The Power of Stress Management. Stress is an inevitable part of life. It's the body's natural response to the demands and challenges we face, and in small doses, it can actually be beneficial. Stress pushes us to act, to make decisions, and to adapt to the challenges we face. It's what keeps us alert, motivated, and engaged in the world around us. But when stress becomes overwhelming, when it builds up and lingers in our minds, it starts to have the opposite effect. Instead of propelling us forward, stress begins to weigh us down, cloud our judgment, and diminish our ability to focus. It becomes a barrier to progress, creating a mental fog that makes even the simplest tasks feel daunting. Stress, when unchecked, has the ability to disrupt everything. It creates tension in the body and clutter in the mind. It pulls your attention away from the present moment, leaving you unable to concentrate on what truly matters. It's a force that causes you to focus on what's wrong, what could go wrong, and what you need to do to fix it. But in the midst of all that focus on the problem, you lose sight of the solution. You become reactive instead of proactive, trapped in a cycle of worry and anxiety that robs you of your energy and your clarity. The problem with stress is that it's not just about the physical sensations you feel in your body, the racing heartbeat, the tight chest, the shallow breathing. It's also a mental and emotional burden. When you're stressed, your mind is constantly occupied by worries, what-ifs, and potential scenarios. This internal noise takes up mental space and energy that could be used for more productive purposes. Instead of being able to focus on the task at hand, your attention is fragmented, pulled in multiple directions by everything you're worried about. But here's the truth. Stress is not the problem. It's how we respond to stress that makes all the difference. Stress is an automatic reaction that the body produces to help us survive and adapt. It's a natural, built-in mechanism that keeps us alert and ready to act. The issue arises when stress becomes chronic, when it continues to build up without being resolved. That's when it starts to take over. That's when it begins to affect our mental clarity, our decision-making, and our ability to focus. The first step in managing stress is recognizing that it's not something you can completely avoid. Stress will always be a part of life. The key, however, is to change your relationship with stress. Instead of letting it control you, you can learn to control it. You can learn to manage your stress in ways that allow you to stay calm, focused, and clear-headed, even in the most challenging situations. One of the most effective ways to manage stress is through mindfulness. Mindfulness is the practice of staying present in the moment, of observing your thoughts and feelings without judgment or reaction. When you're stressed, your mind is often consumed by future worries or past regrets. Mindfulness allows you to shift your focus back to the present, to the here and now. Instead of getting lost in what might happen or what has happened, you can focus on what you're doing in the moment without being overwhelmed by the stress. By practicing mindfulness, you can break the cycle of stress. You can take a step back and observe how your body and mind are responding to the stress without reacting to it. This simple act of awareness creates a space between the stress and your response to it. It's not about stopping the stress, but about shifting how you interact with it. Instead of letting stress dictate your thoughts and actions, you can choose to act with intention, to respond calmly, and to make decisions based on clarity rather than panic. Another important strategy for managing stress is breathing. Stress causes the body to tense up, and the natural reaction is to hold your breath or breathe shallowly. When you consciously focus on your breathing and take deep, slow breaths, you send a signal to your body that it's safe to relax. Deep breathing helps activate the parasympathetic nervous system, the part of your nervous system responsible for calming the body down after a stressful event. By breathing deeply and slowly, you can quickly reduce the physical symptoms of stress and bring your focus back to the present moment. But stress management is not just about calming yourself down in the moment. It's also about creating an environment that reduces stress in the first place. The more you can reduce external stressors, the less your mind has to fight against. This involves setting boundaries, reducing unnecessary distractions, and prioritizing tasks that are most important. By managing your external environment, you create the mental space you need to focus on the tasks at hand. Part of creating a less stressful environment is organizing your time and tasks. One of the biggest contributors to stress is feeling overwhelmed by everything you need to do. The endless to-do lists, the looming deadlines, the constant juggling of responsibilities. It's easy to become paralyzed by the sheer volume of tasks. But when you break everything down into smaller, manageable chunks, the stress begins to subside. By setting clear priorities and focusing on one thing at a time, you can reduce the mental weight that comes with feeling like you have to do everything at once. Time management is also about knowing when to say no. It's easy to take on too much, to try to please everyone, to be available for every request. But every time you say yes to something that isn't aligned with your priorities, you add to your stress. Learning to say no to non-essential tasks, to set boundaries around your time, and to protect your mental energy is crucial for maintaining a sense of calm and focus. Exercise is another important tool for managing stress. Physical activity has a profound impact on your mental state. When you exercise, your body releases endorphins, natural chemicals that make you feel good. Exercise also helps to reduce the levels of cortisol, the stress hormone in your body. Whether it's a brisk walk, a run, yoga, or any other form of physical activity, regular exercise can help your body and mind cope with stress more effectively. While managing stress is important in the moment, it's also about building mental resilience over time. Mental resilience is the ability to bounce back from setbacks, to face adversity without being overwhelmed, and to keep going in the face of difficulty. The more you practice managing stress, the stronger your mental resilience becomes. You start to view stress not as something to avoid, but as something that can be used to your advantage. You learn how to turn stressful situations into opportunities for growth, to see challenges as stepping stones rather than roadblocks. Stress, when managed effectively, can actually propel you forward. It can help you stay sharp, stay focused, and stay motivated. It's when stress becomes chronic, when it builds up without being addressed, that it begins to slow you down and create mental clutter. But by practicing mindfulness, managing your environment, setting boundaries, and building resilience, you can take control of stress instead of letting it control you. As you learn to manage stress, you'll notice a significant shift in your mental clarity. You'll find that you can focus more easily, make decisions more effectively, and move forward with greater confidence. You'll be able to work through challenges without being overwhelmed by them. Stress won't feel like a barrier. It will feel like a natural part of the process. And when you learn how to manage it, you'll be able to handle even the most difficult situations with calm and clarity.